Welcome to the UNICOM Channel English Department. To the lecture today, be with us. Initially, we welcome everyone and salute all the attendants and honor us the bright, great view of bright faces, the seeker of knowledge and truth in order of awareness and the human advance. Be with us and to the lecture today. So, to there.
Welcome to our lecture today, which is one of the most important lectures of UNICOM CREED, regarding UNICOM's visualizations about origin of existence and evolution of universe and beings, which under the title, Structural Foundations for Foci of Live Beings of Evolution, starting from our previous lecture, in which we dealt with components of existence, which we said are merely elements, compounds and mixtures of same elements and products of reactions of those elements themselves, but they differ in terms of quality, quantity, and natural and environmental circumstances in which each compound came across through on its own. Then it classified them as convertible compounds and mixtures, and others that remained in its fixed physical stages. Then entered element of oxygen, which came from the icy planet that fell on the planet Earth, and solar energy, which had the opportunity to reach the planet Earth after crashing of icy planet, which was a barrier between the sun and the Earth. As a blade rotated the search for shifting towards the biological phase, it included all the compounds with mixtures formed from and subjected to somewhat circumstances of identical or convergent. Subject to transformation and growth, then, started transforms, grows, and develops, but for each compound of them, its basic, historical, and special circumstances, and its capabilities to appear to be something, or an object, heading in its own path, as a hub for growth and development, and overwhelmingly they appeared in similar and likeness qualities. Except that they are different sometimes, those are due to the extent of overlap of elements of foundations, circumstances of their foundations, and also circumstances of formation throughout history. So they varied and multiplied and varied in the next biomes in the coming stages. According to its own capabilities, the human became at the forefront according to his mental abilities. Thus in the mind lies on elements of disparity between humans as well. What we can reach in a brief definition of the existence beings, they are all compounds that differ in their characteristics and behaviors, which continue to be hereditary, according to their basic formative criteria and circumstance of formation and conditions of subsequent development, and thus are similar to the same circumstances and causes, and depend on their continuity by resupplying from each other and products of each other, according to their historical relationship that goes back to the origins of formation. And all of them may be subject to fading and loss of existence, or modular change and influence in directions of main development axes, as a result of intervention of an element that contradicts its structural structure, or its loss of a provider to its foundations formative, that these compounds beings in themselves, according to their foundations and circumstances of their formation, may reach stages that are not capable to further continuity of existence or development. Naturally their validity ends in existence and freezes in some situations, or deteriorates and fades in the universe. And on the other hand, that these compounds cosmic among them are colonies of compounds and mixtures of various products of compounds and elements united with each other in a complex entity, but rather form functional devices within a single compound, which makes it a very complicated being, i.e. a colony of highly sensitive active compounds, which does not accept fragmentation or scattering, or that will lead to scatter and fad all the colony, and this colonial entity copies itself through a process of solidarity between internal compounds within the colony. And this an advanced stage in beings of existences. It elevates us to high-end beings which are colonies of active compounds. It is classified as biota. Starting from the first theory, that the founding assets of foundations of biological axes of emergence, that beings of basic, which formed the axes. They are the focal points of breeds which form the future of various biological beings, as well as their variants, evolved from different foci of origin breeds of living organisms, and continued in progress over the ages without mixing the breeds, and that existence of plant species, previous the existence of animal organisms, which was later nurtured on the plants. But in the early ages, all the biota that formed foci of origin are self-propagating organisms as the reproduction in the current plants, with minor differences in animal organisms, which for ages was only a female organism carrying the full reproductive glands for the female and male, self-fertilizes as a result of internal flow, and it gave birth only similar female organisms, bisexual and genital, while at the same time, the living organisms in stages composition and evolution, all them they feed on plants only. According to a note taken from one of the scientific sites saying, "You may not think you are very similar to catfish or dinosaur rex, but the microscope will reveal to you that they are all made of very similar types of cells, as well as plants and fungi. Origins of compounds of the same elements in the complex beings are nothing more than colonies of the same elements in their compounds and their products. The differences between strains of one species created by the amounts, weights, and circumstances. And an example of this for any organisms that produce a lineage with sexual reproduction with each other, they unite on the same origins and formative foundations. Regardless of whether they differ physically or psychologically, these are only effects of scales and conditions." So a summary of this lecture, that all beings are categorized into sequences between unknown absolutely and unknown elements in the records of human knowledge, or they may didn't exist in their original forms, and elements that have already been known, and others simple and complex compounds and mixtures and products of interactions and mergers between the elements. These complex compounds, including those that have resisted and reached the stage of structural foci, and became mutable and growth evolving and crossed the circumstances in past transformational mutations and became centers of origin for the establishment of evolutionary developing strains. So they progressed towards what the world's beings today. While it may there were many structural foci failed in progress in the ancient times, some of them have been codified in context of human knowledge, or some of them faded early. Depending on natural circumstances, their existence has become extinct and humans have not known them. While there are strains that are still threatened with extinction and loss of existence as compounds through the vanishing in the universe, while the universe continues endlessly. What we can understand and benefit us as humans strains of the foregoing, that in this universe there are no criteria for quality and pure preference for origins and inheritance between beings, but are attributes acquired as a result of natural activities and may change at any moment, and there are no criteria for beauty other than value. What is given to the being in question during the performance of a task, and therefore just as diamonds, wood, charcoal and carbon are all one thing, differed between them, the circumstances and measures, and valued them the human mind according to importance of their tasks and roles in human uses, thus giving their classification in nature according to their cosmic tasks in existence, and similar to this gives classification of beings in the universe, as a human establishes them according to their importance to its own world, and from this perfume gives the classification of people in the human world as well, between who is righteous and who is righteous, because everyone is merely from the same elements, compounds and mixtures, separated by the universal standards and circumstances to be in varied and contradictory physical forms, and beings patterns that not fixed. The best and the most beautiful are those who can capable for struggle for survival, and able for continuation, in the universe, for keeping up by their own worth, while save with them the others and progress, and thus the strains of beings advanced in their top the living beings, and in the forefront the human beings. We will see in the next lecture how the structural foci lead battle of transformation and classified as living beings and evolved in various axes of being. Structural foci, then, are complex compounds, mixtures, and results of their interactions, pellets in cells that are internally coherent and active in interactions and exchanges with each other. And they remain so over millions of years. Then it turned into foci of living beings. It feeds on the elements around it and builds and developing itself automatically. Then they became origins of fountainhead of present living beings. This paragraph will be an introduction to our next lecture on the origins and development of living beings. You are grateful, and until we meet in the next lecture, February 3/20.
DNA is at the heart of almost every living thing. It carries the genes that make us who we are. This is how it works. The secret lies in DNA's molecular structure. DNA is made of lots of small molecules called nucleotides. Each nucleotide is built from 3 smaller molecules called sugars, phosphates, and bases. There are 4 kinds of base, called A, C, G, and T. Millions of these nucleotides get strung together into a long chain. Then comes the clever bit. DNA is made of 2 chains held together by the bases. The second strand has a complementary series of bases, because A can only pair with T, and C can only pair with G. That means it's really easy to copy a DNA molecule and keep the sequence of bases exactly the same. And that's why almost every living thing uses DNA.